Welcome, one and all, to the inaugural episode of Maester Monthly, a pseudo-monthly podcast hosted by the moderators of the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. Before we get into it, this podcast is going to cover information from the Winds of Winter sample chapters and the TV show. So if you're averse to that, now's your last chance. I'm one of your hosts, Michael, better known as Bookshelf Stud.
And I'm Eliana, aka Glass Table Girl. And in these podcasts, we're going to be featuring various guests. So this month, we are joined by some of our fellow moderators. Today, we're joined by the inimitable scholar himself, Joe Magician.
Hi there, I'm Matt, otherwise known as Joe Magician. I write way too much about wolves, Craster, and Waymar Royce.
That's a very accurate sentence. It looks like someone else has actually hacked into this call. I don't really recognize the name at all or who this could be, but you know what the heck, let's have him on. Everybody say hello to Brendan B. Fish, aka Jeff.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for letting me hack into your call. I just finished up a really long Wildcards blog post, and I'm excited to be here. I've gotten that off my plate. So now that I've completed and delivered the latest edition of Wildcards, I can enjoy spending time with this podcast.
Thanks, George.
Incredible. It's really an honor to have you here.
Anytime, guys.
Today, we're going to we're going to hit on some of our personal favorite posts from the last month or so. Things we liked, the nicest of catches, the hottest of topics, general highlights from the subreddit.
And then we're going to round off this discussion with the big topic of the day / week, the Best of 2016 awards for the subreddit. Woo!
Woo, yay!
Yay! But to get everyone sort of started here, I want to ask a little question. Who is your favorite point of view character in A Song of Ice and Fire, and why is it Quentyn Martell? Eliana, why don't you get us started? Why do you think Quentyn is the best point of view character?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and for which, the answer is just obvious. He's the most important character. Like, we've been following him throughout all 5 of these books. So, I mean, the entire story is filtered through him. But, really close seconds after Quentyn Martell, my favorite POVs are Sansa and Theon. Maybe that says something about me. Maybe I just really like suffering, or I don't know. I think that they just have some really great character growth.
It could go either way, yeah. Matt, what about you, Joe Magician?
I am really a big fan of Quentyn Martell. I mean, as Eliana said, he is just present throughout all the books. My favorite moment is when he got lit on fire. That was really just great. My favorite POVs are actually, this is kind of an unpopular one. I like Jon Snow's POV. He's kind of a whiny brat, and he's kind of growing up throughout the story, but I really like the world building around him, the things that happen to him, and how much of the story seems to be tied into what's going on with him. And then my second favorite is Jaime, who, while having sort of a smaller plot, is more of a grayer character, and you can really get inside what it's like for him as he juggles his personal life, his family life, his job, and all that other stuff, and trying to figure out what the best thing is to do.
His family life.
Yeah. His family life, quote unquote. Which
as
family,
though? Jeff, what about you?
So, besides Quentyn, who was a fantastic and fabulous point of view character, whose story I really, really enjoy, I would say Jaime is probably my favorite one. Of all the point of view characters, he's the one that I feel is George's most complex point of view character. He really drives home a lot of the really strange and difficult moral questions that George likes to ask, and he's kind of the character too that you as the reader, you're like, well, this is really an awful thing that you did, but if I was in the same circumstance and I had a little kid who found myself doing terrible things to my sister, and it could end up leading to civil war and kill millions of people, well, maybe I would possibly push him out of a window sort of thing in order to kind of end it all. But obviously he's not a morally good character.
That says a lot about you.
Have you been near any kids in windows?
No. It's all hypothetical. All hypothetical. So, but yeah, besides Quentin, Jamie definitely would be my favorite point of view character.
Gotcha. Well, look, it's no secret. My favorite point of view character is, in fact, Quentin Martell, the hottest man in the Seven Kingdoms.
Wow, that's us too.
Boo.
Yeah. No, I love Quentin because his chapters. I mean, I think there's only 4 of them total, but they're like a novella by themselves. They're this little adventure story that's a deconstruction of other adventure stories. And I love that. I think that's one of the things that A Song of Ice and Fire does really well, and it's exemplified through Quentin. And I obviously identify with him a lot because who hasn't just been like a total sad sack at some point in their life?
Not me.
Oof, getting personal.
So speaking of Quentin Martell, we wanted to talk about some of our favorite posts from the past month or so on the subreddit. And Eliana, I know one of your posts that you wanted to talk about had a lot to do with Quentin Martell.
Yeah, there was this great post by Sarah Plant called The Martells Trapped in a Fantasy. And the basic idea of it is that, it talks about all the different characters of House Martell and how each of them is sort of living out their own little medieval fantasy world. We start off with Quentin and deconstructing the fairy tale motifs. And you've talked about this, how it's a deconstruction of the whole idea of adventure. I know that Poor Quentin on Tumblr also has a whole series on this, but they also go on to talk about the other members of the Martell family and how, this is a theme that you see for all of them. Like Ariane, she believes that she's on this grand adventure. She's the princess in the tower, but she also makes these deadly mistakes along the way and will continue to do so in future books. We see this with the Sand Snakes. Yeah. They believe that they are each special. They have their own little niche of what they're each really good at, and then we follow them as they're going to a world where Oberyn Martell's name isn't going to protect them so much once they leave that blanket of safety that is Dorne. We come to Doran Martell, who fancies himself to be this mastermind player, and he's trying to, in the words of Sarah Plant, he's trying to be Frank Underwood from the comfort of his bedroom. And then it goes from there to talking about the people who surround the Martell family, such as Areo Hota, who's the only one living in reality, and then how the children who are playing at war in the pools of the water gardens sort of symbolize the Martells, and they parallel them and showing how they're Navette as they embark on this grand war. So yeah, I just thought that this was a really great post that was breaking down all of these different themes that we see with the Martell family. Did any of you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, one thing I really liked about it was it sort of goes into showing kind of the meta thing that goes along with theory crafting A Song of Ice and Fire. A lot of people find these conspiracies and all these characters trying to make things happen, and I think the Martells are a really good example of how those things kind of fall apart sometimes, just from the reality of their situations. Like, the Martells are not a particularly powerful house in the Seven Kingdoms at this point. After Robert's Rebellion, they lost a lot of soldiers. Their land is primarily desert. They don't have a lot of output. But their family is still acting like they're one of the great houses. They're still trying to, overthrow a kingdom from a really disadvantaged position. They're, trying to help the Targaryens. They're trying to, sow seeds throughout Old Town and King's Landing. And it's falling flat on its face. And I don't know, I thought that was a really good comment from George about what it's kind of like really living in the Seven Kingdoms for one of these families. They're not they're all not going to be the Tyrells.
Right. You can't have all
not
of
going to be
them
the
winning
Martells,
all the
Tyrells.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I gotta say what I liked about it a lot. I mean, this kind of thing is awesome. These posts that look at the meta aspect, and at the end he just had one line that I liked, which was about Oberyn getting his face crushed by the living embodiment of war. And I was like, yeah, that's perfect. Oberyn, is living not exactly in a revenge fantasy, but yeah, he comes to King's Landing to get vengeance and all that kind of stuff. And then he gets his head smashed in, which it fits in really well with that whole theme of Doran and the Sand Snakes and Arianne and Quentin, all kind of living out these, like, they're trying to be fantasy characters, but they live in the real world. Yeah, that's a huge part of Song of Ice and Fire.
It definitely is, and I really liked the part where he takes the idea of the children playing at the in the pool in the water gardens, and how it symbolizes the nativity of the Martells as they're about to embark on this grand war, because he has these kids that are like riding on each other's backs and they're like splashing each other with water, but they don't really. It's not at all similar to what war actually is, and is something that we saw in the first 3 books, where you have, you know, the Starks and the Lannisters, the Tyrells, the Boltons, the Riverlands, all these different houses and locations that see a really horrific war that ends up leaving tens of thousands dead, crops destroyed, and just really kind of drives home that point. And the Martells have had really nothing to do with the war so far, but they have these fantasies that they're going to be able to be grand players in it. Arianne in particular thinks of herself as this like amazing political player, and she's really not. She's, as much as I love Arianne, like she's not a great, like her father, and in this way she's very similar to her father. She's not a grand political conspiracist. She's not a grand political thinker either. Her idea of the Queenmaker plot is, if you just stop for a moment, take it away from Arianne's perspective, like you realize like how bad this plan is, how they're going to take the princess, take her across the desert without being seen by anyone.
With Darkstar,
freaking Darkstar, and like a couple of her friends. Like, and then we're going to take a boat and then sail up the river, and we're going to link up with this other house who has no idea we're coming to Queen Myrcella. Like, who does that? Who thinks that way, unless they think that like, there's some sort of fantasy character?
Someone that's never left Sunspear.
Yeah, someone who's never left Sunspear, which is Arianne.
That's a really good point, actually. Like I mean, her plan fails so quickly that you almost don't have time to appreciate how stupid it is. But
it's gonna be great.
Yeah, you're right. Like it makes no sense. Yeah,
but it's interesting is because afterwards she gets like the talking to by Doran Martell, and the reader comes away thinking that Arianne has learned how to be a master player now. Now she knows that like the right way to play the game is Doran's way to play the game. Except for in the Winds of Winter, you start to get Arianne being like, well, I was originally going to be the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. I was originally going to be in King's Landing with Viserys Targaryen as my consort, but we're going to let Quentin have this, but he's so ordinary, and he's so not attractive, and he's so, like, why would anyone want to have Quentin be king in over Westeros? So it seems likely in the Winds of Winter that Arianne Martell particularly is going to be going sideways on Doran Martell's plan, and might try and get herself crowned Queen of the Seven Kingdoms with a certain Targaryen claimant who has suddenly appeared on the shores of Westeros, and we'll have to see how this is going to turn out in the Winds of Winter. But along those lines, one of my favorite posts this past past 30 days rather, was one of our fellow moderators, Admiral Kurd, whose voice you'll hear later on in this podcast. He had a post on why the Winds of Winter is likely to exceed 1,500 manuscript pages. Just to talk briefly about it, George R. R. Martin has said since probably as long as he's been talking about the Winds of Winter that he expects the book to be about 1,500 manuscript pages, and the main reason being because he thinks that you can't bind the book between more than 1,500 pages. I mean, he did a little bit more for Storm of Swords and for A Dance with Dragons, whose length was 1,510 manuscript pages and 1,521 manuscript pages.
Right.
Admiral Kurd's idea was, well, the reason why the book isn't done right now is because that George R. R. Martin is trying to take 2,700 pages of material that was included in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons and trying to constrain that into one book. And Martin has said in the past that he's going to have all of his characters back for the Winds of Winter, but that might be a very tall order given the fact that he has, almost twice the number of pages kind of like leading into this book on the Winds of Winter, and he didn't really kill a whole lot of his point of view characters in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. Now, he said he's going to kill more of them in the Winds of Winter, but it's still going to be very difficult for him to hit 1,500 pages. It's likely he's going to be overwriting the book considerably. And he has done so, and he did so for A Dance with Dragons, where he got up to like 1,800 manuscript pages before he ended up starting to rip stuff out of the book and send it to the Winds of Winter, and just like kind of edit it down too as well. So what do you guys think?
Yeah.
Why do you think that George is taking so long to write the Winds of Winter?
Okay. So yeah, I definitely agree with, what you're saying and, what Admiral Kurt has said about trying to pare down the length of whatever the Winds of Winter is going to be to something that's a palatable length. Like anyone who has had to do editing or do any sort of work in copy knows that trying to get those words down takes a super long time. Another thing that would take a long time is once you have all of these things written, how do you get that into an order that makes sense? You have to have all of these POVs in some sort of order and then string them together in a way so that it holds together thematically.
Yeah, absolutely. That's hard work, yeah.
One thing I was noticing that Admiral Kurd brought up that I really agreed with is it's the revisions. It's every time he makes a choice, it echoes backwards throughout all of his pages.
Yeah.
Because he wants them all to line up. Some authors just sort of gloss over it and they'll just sort of be like, oh, I made a mistake. Okay, George is a perfectionist about this stuff. He wants every chapter and every plot to flow into each other perfectly.
Yeah.
And that adds a lot of time. He's not writing like 100 pages. He's writing like 400 pages because he's like gone back 4 times to do it. And he's also this is something I've appreciated from his writing style and his POV selections, is that he likes to have 2 characters in the same place so you can see things in a different way. But that's sort of trapped him in a few ways because he now has to figure out reasons why those people are still alive.
True.
To keep the plot going. And for people he may have wanted to kill long ago, he just can't because he wants another side of the story to be seen. Like you see that with like Barristan and Dany, where he wanted another POV within Meereen to show how Dany is struggling with what she's doing, despite the fact that she thinks things are going like not great but kind of okay, and Barristan's showing you the other way. And so you have to think of ways to keep Barristan alive and Dany and Meereen to make them work out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like he's gotten a lot of overlap, I think, with a lot of the point of views. And I mean, the thing that I really appreciated about this post from Admiral Kurd was like I love this stuff about like the size of the books and the manuscript pages and all that. And there's there's the series that inspired Gurm to write this, which was Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, which I won't shut up about basically. But Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn came out a few years before he started writing Song of Ice and Fire, early 90s, I guess. And the last book in that series was 520,000 words long.
Wow.
Which is an insane number. I mean, I think Dance and Storm are like 400 something.
It's about 420,000, yeah.
Yeah, okay, 420. So yeah, so we're looking at something even longer than those by a solid margin. And they ended up having to, like, they published that book. Some places were able to publish it as one huge volume. Some had to split it into 2. So it's possible to publish a book like that. And I think the fact that The Winds of Winter is going to sell so much, because it is.
It's going to be the top book whenever it comes out.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like, it's guaranteed to be, the New York Times bestseller for, like, a year. So I feel like it's almost... maybe the publisher's not as worried anymore about him hitting their limits for what's publishable because, it's a special occasion. They might be able to do some sort of massive printing run or print 2 volumes or whatever just to get it out. Because I'm sure they would be happy just to have something new by George R.R. Martin hitting bookshelves.
And for our next post, we have one from user Yald. Why is the snow and he only shows me snow capitalized? This is a post about Melisandre from A Dance with Dragons, where she is asking the Lord of Light or whoever's on the other side of that fire for visions of Azor Ahai, and she gets frustrated that the fire keeps showing her different things, in particular snow with a capital S. which many in the fandom have taken to mean, oh, that means Azor Ahai is Jon. Or it sort of shows the problem with Melisandre and her fanaticism in the story. She wants it to be Stannis. She's gone so far for Stannis in the story. She's burned people alive. She's put glamours on Mance Rayder and a sword to trick people into thinking it's Stannis. Like, if he has the symbols, maybe it's really him. And right in front of her, in her own religion, she's being shown that's not correct, and she just refuses to believe it. And I thought it was a really interesting discussion about kind of fanaticism and not really seeing the world for the reality around you. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I gotta agree. Obviously Mel has this massive blind spot, but also like the discussion, like you said, that popped up in the comments of that, which is probably one of the best things about the subreddit. Let's be real. The posts are great, but also just the conversations that people burst into, and there was so much good discussion about is she really seeing Jon Snow and just not buying it? And some people were like, yeah, absolutely, of course that's what she's seeing. I really like this post.
Yeah, and that's really, to me, that's what makes a great post on the subreddit, is when you have people that get so excited about the post that they write these like ridiculously long extended comments, and if you scroll through the post itself, and it'll be in our show notes, you'll see these long, ridiculously detailed comment chains going back and forth over between Jon, whether people think it's actually Jon Snow or whether she's seeing Snow and it's sort of like a little bit of a hint to the reader more than to Melisandre herself. On the question though, I do think that she's seeing Jon Snow, and she's like, well, it's not Jon Snow. Everybody knows it's Stannis, or I know it's Stannis.
Exactly.
But I'm seeing Jon Snow, so obviously my visions are wrong, because sometimes I don't interpret my visions correctly. It's something she says later on in A Dance with Dragons, where she says, well, it's not that my visions are wrong, my interpretation is wrong. She tells Jon this much later on. So to me, I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, okay, well, it seems very likely to me that she's seeing Jon Snow, and she's like, well, I will see certain things. I will see, like, the fires burning down. What did she see? She saw
a lot of towers. She saw Bloodraven and Bran. Yeah,
the towers falling by the sea, and she thinks, and Jon asks her whether is that Eastwatch, and she's like, well, I don't really know, so it's got to be Eastwatch.
If she had read our subreddit, she would know it's Old Town.
I had it was White Harbor for a while until that chapter came out from the Winds of Winter, the Forsaken. I always thought it was White Harbor.
So this is kind of going off in a different direction, but I was sort of thinking about, how Matt was saying that, Melisandre is shown exactly what it means, but she doesn't want to interpret it that way. And she says, no, what I'm seeing is right. That's what is said by her Lord of Light, but it's just the interpretation. And it kind of makes you wonder about George R. R. Martin's upbringing, being, if he was brought up very devoutly Catholic, and the whole questions of theology of, you have that text there, but everyone still doesn't agree on what it means.
Yeah, right. Like, she's looking directly at the source code, and even she can't figure out what's being said there.
Yep.
And even just the reliability of what she's being seen, we don't really know why she's seeing thing in flames. We don't know, is this somebody else? Is this a god? Why are they showing her this? Why her?
Yeah.
And there's so many questions around this, and Melisandre thinks she has the right answer because she already knows the answer. And she's sort of given up finding out more about her world. And I think that's really indicative about Melisandre.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Thank you. Wow.
Well, another post that I really liked recently, also talking about how people perceive things from their perspective, was The Devil's Advocate, an essay about the Red Wedding. This essay does a lot of different things. It talks about how one can exert power and to make things happen using some really great historical examples that I would have never thought to use. I mean, obviously there's the Black Dinner that people always talk about in the context of the Red Wedding, but they talk about how one needs the means, and this could be armies or money, in order to make things happen, and then they need the motive or opportunity to, get other people to help you help you do those actions. And then they talk about, you know, the morality of the ends justify the means, and that very iconic line from Tywin Lannister, you know, explain to me why it is more noble to kill 10,000 men in battle than a dozen at dinner. Oof. And, you know, how the messenger really matters. Like, maybe coming from another person, yeah, that would be an interesting argument. But from Tywin Lannister, who is constantly killing more than a dozen people at dinner, not so powerful. And what I like about it is that, you know, he talks about why it is she talks about why it is a rational decision on the part of Tywin Lannister to go through with the Red Wedding, like what their thought process would be with all the different Starks. And then just because I forgot to mention it, the writer of this post is AOW Shadow. Ow Shadow.
Ow Shadow.
Ayo, Shadow.
Ayo. Okay. Ow, ow, ow.
Jeff, you're so cool.
Yeah, baby.
So yeah, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on this.
I gotta say, one of the things I liked about it, yeah, it's such a good post. One of the things I liked about it was how they buried some really solid character analysis without, like, it wasn't all about character, but their section about Tywin Lannister playing the devil's advocate and all that. Mm-hmm. I think it's just like one paragraph that they mention that they call Tywin the big specialist in unnecessary collateral damage.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's totally accurate. Like Tywin is not at all the person who has the moral high ground to talk about, you know, oh yes, well, I did it for the greater good. And that's just a mention in here, but it's really on point and really, really smart, I think. And, you know, something you might not notice right away, but that really develops the way you look at the Red Wedding. Yeah. I love this post. I'm saying that about all of them, but I love this post.
Yeah, this one really made me think. And one of the things he talks about in the post itself is about how he made the Starks out to, like, just fail from the get-go, which is true. And as you can see, George R. Martin used a variety of methods to get the Starks in a low place and then just, like, cut them off of the knees and, well, at the head if you're Catelyn Stark almost. But you have the other side of it, which is that this kind of the Starks returning back, and how that George has set up this pattern where it looks like the people who did the Red Wedding are going to get their own. From Starks and Stark loyalists, you know, you have Lady Stoneheart running around the Riverlands in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, and definitely in The Winds of Winter. And you also have Stannis up north about to fight the Boltons. And it seems like that both the Freys and the Boltons are going to take some serious heat, so to speak, from people around him. The question is going to be, for me, whether George ends up making that catharsis we're going to feel when these bad guys kind of, quote-unquote, get their own. Kind of subvert that sort of catharsis so that we are like, well, you know, these guys are like, are being avenged. The Starks are being avenged, but there's a lot of, like, innocent people dying at the same time. A lot of people who are, like, getting in kind of in the crossfire. I mean, and I think a great example of this is people are like, and for those of you who are listening, you may never heard of it. It's called the Red Wedding 2.0. It's a theory that Lady Stoneheart will use Jaime to infiltrate the Brotherhood Without Banners into River Run when Davin Lannister marries his Frey bride, in order to have this extremely vengeful event occur for to kill all the Freys and Lannisters who perpetuated the Red Wedding.
Right.
I look at it and I think in horror of all the serving men and women and all of the oh gosh, I don't even know, the all like the innocent Frey sisters who had no part in the Red Wedding, and all the Lannisters who had no part in the Red Wedding.
Yeah. Like is Joy Hill gonna bite the dust in the?
Yeah, she's an 8-year-old girl, right?
Yeah,
or she might be a little bit older
the young bastard or something. Yeah,
but all these people that just had nothing to do with the Red Wedding are going to end up getting in the crosshairs, and that's going to be really sad and tragic. And that's really good writing, in my opinion, that George will subvert that catharsis we would feel, because we're like, yeah, get him, Beanie, sort of thing. But that's
get him, Beanie.
Yeah.
No, it's great because it's like he's going to explore this idea like that, you know, is it more noble, blah, 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 men at dinner. it's like he's going to explore it from the other side now. Like for now, the bad guys have done it, so to speak, bad guys, and now the good guys are going to end up doing things like that, where they do these sort of like brutal things that are kind of shocking. And it's like, well, maybe that was more noble. Maybe it's a just cause. So yeah, it's cool. It's like a mirror. It's like a mirror. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Gosh,
I agree. I especially like the parts about Tywin and his justification and how this is all works. But it sort of displays that Tywin is not like the military mastermind that people think he is.
Oh
like,
yeah, that's a great point.
A modern view of war is that it's not just the battles or the assassinations. You also have to take into account the politics and the optics of how all this looks. And Tywin is taking it from a very, very, very like simple thing that like, oh, if I just solve my problem and I kill all these people, everyone will respect me then, and then I will win the war. And he just completely ignores how many people he's offending, how many people are not going to be okay with what he did. And even just a failure on a basic level. His quote is that, why is it more noble to kill some people at dinner rather than like 10,000? 10,000 people are still going to die in the Riverlands. It's innocent people. And in this case, it's going to be civilians. It's going to be people who don't deserve it, instead of soldiers who have signed up to be in the battles. So in a lot of ways, Tywin's plan had to sort of failed the whole way through.
But I think that's like what they address in the first part of the essay, which I thought was interesting because, you know, like A Song of Ice and Fire isn't real life, you know, it's fabricated. You can have that you know, that cathartic moment or deceptively cathartic moment in which you have that family that you've been rooting for, like, take revenge. But then, which is, as they point out, kind of like with Julius Caesar, but it doesn't always work out like that. And I guess Tywin was banking on having a William Crichton moment, and that, you know, he would get away with it. There were no consequences other than maybe some people going, tut tut, that was not very good, but
well, that is kind of what happened with the Rains and the Castamirs. Nobody really punished him for doing that, and that's one of the more horrific things in the story.
Oh my gosh, just
that's
drowning people in a mine. Yeah, that's pretty awful.
And I mean, like, if his track record is like, yeah, I've always gotten away with it before, you know, why should this time be any different?
It also shows kind of a lack of trust in his children. He's sort of saying, like, I can solve this right now, and then we're good forever. He's not including the rest of his family in, like, sort of a larger strategy and how to win over the rest of the kingdom. He's just kind of being like, I'll solve it, hand it over, we're good, dynasty. And yeah, it shows a real lack of trust for Tyrion and Jaime and Cersei going forwards, and Joffrey.
I mean, I don't trust Cersei, so you know, maybe he was right. Do you trust the son who's like, yeah, I'm gonna join the Kingsguard?
Well, he tried with Tom, and he's like, all right, maybe this kid will be okay going forward.
Yeah, that's gonna work out.
his long walk.
You mean when Tommen installs Windows 95?
King's Landing itself.
Oy.
Oh boy.
So another really cool thing that came out this month was the So Spake Martin search engine by Holloway Division. It's a really cool tool if you've ever, been writing a 10,000 word essay and you're like, what did George R. R. Martin say about John Connington before 2011? Did he say anything about House Connington or the Golden Company? And yes, in fact, he has, but it took me a while to find that information. This search engine allows you to actually look specifically in Google for different topics that George R. Martin has talked about that have been recorded by Elio Garcia and Linda Atkinson in the Westeros.org So Spake Martin archive, and it's something you guys should really check out if you haven't had the chance.
Oh yeah, it's so useful.
Very useful tool, especially for writing. Bookmarked. You can especially use it to be like, I have this crazy idea. Has George ever said anything about it? Oh yeah, he completely disproves my theory right off the bat. Okay, I don't have to write it then.
Yeah. And it's fun to find the patterns in what he says, you know, like how he generally doesn't actually deny things outright. He'll just say, oh, interesting, yes,
It's quite the troll.
When people ask him about things like, you know, RLJ, etc. Is that abbreviation clear enough? RLJ? Everyone knows what I'm talking about, right?
Renly plus Loras equals... John Connington.
Red lavender Junebug.
Great work, guys. Great work. Well, I wanted to highlight one more post from this past month when we had the user Alamut Jones.
Great name.
I don't know if that's a real name or not. Who knows? A self-proclaimed medievalist nerd who, after a lot of great comments in this one thread, decided to do an Ask Me Anything sort of informal thread on the subreddit, and there were a lot of good answers in there about like how close to accurate is Song of Ice and Fire when it comes to depicting medieval European sensibilities. And it ranges from things that are fairly spot on to things that are just entirely out of George's imagination, just no bearing in reality whatsoever. I don't know if you guys had any favorites from there. I liked where I think it's Alamut Jones, who pointed out that the marriages in medieval times were almost never like as young as George writes them for a lot of the main characters.
Yeah, that was good. I to be honest, this is a question that I asked, but I asked the individual whether chevaucher, which is a French word talking about how you would go through the countryside burning villages and crops and things like that in order to convince your enemy to surrender to you, whether it was similar to how it was actually practiced in Western Europe. The response I got was no, it's more of an invention by George R. R. Martin, but it does represent at a wider scale than would ever be seen in the Riverlands during the War of the Five Kings, something that did happen like during the 100 Years' War and the march of Black Prince Edward across northern France in the 14th century, different things like that. But George, like the amount of devastation that the Lannisters inflicted on the Riverlands really outweighed any of the financial benefits that they would get from burning all of these crops. Because the idea is you don't want to burn all of the crops, because then you would have to, eventually you have to like come back around and use the land in order to get some income and wealth off of it and some food off it as well. So really good answers. Yeah.
It's also especially dangerous in their world. If you're burning crops when winters last 5 years, you're just kind of cutting off your own nose to spite it in that case. I mean, Jamie gives the advice, I forget to who, but Jamie gives the advice where he says, like, grow as many crops as you can, stock up for winter, and the rest of the Lannisters are going around burning all of them.
Well, doesn't he say that? Does he say that in his last chapter in Feast for Crows, and it snows at the end of the chapter?
Yeah, that's right. It's really short-sighted thinking on the Lannisters' part.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that about does it for the posts we wanted to highlight from the last month or so. Although, obviously, there's a million more we could talk about. There's always, something interesting popping up here and there. But we do want to talk about the Best of 2016 awards, which recently wrapped up. We're looking at the results right now. Assistants are coming up to us and handing us envelopes, with little red wax sealings on them. Mine is just a smear of pink wax, actually. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad sign.
Did Jen Snow really write that, or was it Mance Raider who wrote it?
Whoa.
Was it Barbary Dustin, though? I mean, it could be anybody.
Yeah, this is... yeah, so the Best of 2016 awards, guys. Let's kick it off with the Best New Theory award, which went to King Littlefinger for their expansive, I think it's a 4-part post, maybe 3 parts, the Harrenhal conspiracy, which was all about the conspiracy that took place during the tourney at Harrenhal, and just very in depth. He came up with this novel idea that there was this extra faction in the trying to plot at the tournament, and that it was basically just this circle of conspiracies and counter conspiracies and circles within circles, and this insane analysis of all of the different players who were at the tournament and everybody who was trying to get one over on Mad King Ares at the time. I don't know if you guys were able to read all of the words in that theory. because it was a very long post.
According to my Reddit enhancement suite, I have upvoted all 4 of King Littlefinger's posts. So yes, guy. I read them. I really like them a whole lot. I say it's one of those things is that I don't know if you guys find this, but there are a lot of times where I will read a post and I'm like, wow, this is a really great post. I agree with 60% of it. And the 60% I agree with, I absolutely adore and love and I think is wonderful. And there's 40% I'm like, well, I don't agree with it necessarily, but I don't think it's a bad thing either that I don't agree with it, because it could be that Martin just has that, ends up coming up with that or ends up using that, and we get a really good story out of it. So yeah, I read them. I love the posts. I really liked the idea. I think my favorite part of it, and this is just gets super meta, but super minute, but the part about Ethan Glover and how he was potentially the source of the information for Aerys Targaryen finding out about Southern ambitions and all of these Northern lords and River lords joining up together to, do their thing. So I liked it a lot. I thought it was really, really good. It's also interesting.
There were a lot of great ideas like that buried in there.
Yeah, and that's the thing I liked about how expansive it was and how you can even if you weren't going to agree with say, I will say for instance, I didn't agree with the idea that Ashara Dane was the information conduit between the different potential conspirators.
Yes, you wouldn't want to do that at a ball. You'd do that in private.
Right. But I thought it was a really good idea, but there was so many other great ideas built into the post itself that made it completely worthwhile and completely worth reading.
Yeah, part of what I really loved about this essay series is because one of my favorite theories is Southern ambitions, and it just built so heavily on a lot of that. And then for the first few posts, it's just really well built how it starts out with one point and just slowly keeps adding more of them and creates this sort of tower of an argument.
Yeah, King Littlefinger's post was really good.
For our next award, we had the Alchemist Award, which last year was won by the infamous D plus D equals T. That post. This year it was won by Skull the Greatjohn for his post, The Twist We've Probably Missed, or Fire and Blood, or You Should Read the Dany Chapters. In this post, Skull the Greatjohn takes a really ambitious and insightful look at Dany and what happens to her after she comes out of the pyre, looking at kind of tying it into how a lot of people think Jon will be coming back, where he'll be changed, and he applies the same thing to Dany, and he look at the before and after and tries to draw out how she might be if Jon's going to be some sort of ice zombie, maybe Dany is already a fire zombie, and goes into a lot of the details and trying to suss out, is this true? And I think it's a really, really well-written post and incredibly imaginative.
But you still want to set yourself on fire after reading it, right?
I do want to set myself on fire.
Well, that's the best part about it, because if it makes you want to set yourself on fire, it's funny because it's about Dany being on fire.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's so
exactly.
great about
because
it.
maybe if we set ourselves on fire, we
account.
too will come back as fire zombies. Like Quentin, yes.
Let's try.
You guys all need to delete your account.
This has to
delete
work.
your account.
Which
all of
I have
them.
so many.
All
I have
of
so many alts, Jeff.
All of our alts?
So this post wanted to make me set myself on fire. Reading it, it's very creative use of quotations on Song of Ice and Fire, as is often the case in these posts where I'm reading good posts. I'm like, okay, so you're taking this to mean this, but I don't necessarily think it means that sort of thing. And by the end of it, where they're talking about Dany is going to be a fire zombie, I kind of was ready to just throw my computer across the room. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but really, and in all seriousness, I want to say that this was a very well-written post that I disagreed with, but I thought was worth reading and thinking about. And actually, when it was nominated for an award, I got to reread it again for the first time, and I felt all of the same feelings I felt the first time I read the post.
I feel the exact same way. if you look down in the comments, I believe you'll see some of us arguing against it on its merit. That kind of happens sometimes. But I just want to go back and say, even though it's this post that makes you want to light yourself on fire, it's not that he's taking... The idea of it is very creative. He's like, we look at Mel and how she's seemingly very old from the show, and we don't really know what's happening there, and John and all these other things. He's taking a theme that's already there. It's just he's maybe applying it incorrectly, but it's a very good post and using that idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's such a good spiritual successor to be the follow-up winner to DDT, because DDT, you read it and yeah, it's insane, but like you go through it and they've structured it well with all these quotes and sort of their chains of logic that when you break it down maybe don't actually hold up, but it's they create a chain of logic and it's a great spiritual successor to that. I think very fun, like
totally,
yeah.
And it's not the first time you see someone speculating on, is this person resurrected besides Mel, that we kind of have sort of confirmed in the show. Jeff has that post about Victorian potentially being resurrected.
Live that down.
So it's not out of the entire realm of possibility. I also want to bring up, going back to the comments, some wonderful gems where we have puns and take Charmander and turn it into like a Targaryen thing, and it becomes Tarmander and Targarazard or Tarazard, depending on how you want it. And Matt and I are really still into the Pokemon game, so
I will never leave that fandom. It is forever.
Yeah, pretty much.
See, and without this thread, we never would have had that. We never
true.
would have had those.
Yeah, that's true.
Those puns.
My life is richer for
Such
that.
It's a
Valuable.
beautiful
Exactly.
marriage of two of my favorite things.
Yeah.
All right, now our next category in the best ofs, we brought in a special guest to help us. Can you say hi to everyone, Admiral Kurd?
Hey, I'm here. I've been here like the whole time, lurking in the shadows.
Like
silently.
Bloodraven.
Exactly. Like
Not
very
unlike
much
Bloodraven.
like Bloodraven. Yeah, I didn't have an intro, so I'm Admiral Kurd or Aaron. Hello friends. Hello enemies. That's pretty much hellos. Yeah, okay. So now we move on to the Dolorous Ed Award. This award goes to the people who had the best one-liner for the past year. A number of one-liners, number of good one-liners. The first up is Charlie Box, who after the the third episode or so of Game of Thrones season 6 said they had the like brand fake away, or like they didn't actually finish with the Tower of Joy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And his one-liner was, D&D, what do we say to R plus L equals J theorists? Not today.
Got him.
Got him.
Moving on to 21XX, who says, after Maisie was like hyping up coming season 7, she said a bunch of tweets. She's a fiend of the Twitter, as the kids put it. She says, I feel this person, Maisie, really hyped stuff up, and 21X says, I feel like Maisie's the type that might have that kind of reaction to an appetizer at Olive Garden. Olive Garden is not a highly respected restaurant, although it wants to be.
Are you really talking down Olive Garden? It's a great place. All the breadsticks.
It's a garden where all the olives grow.
I have a story about Olive Garden, but
All of the
Maybe
olives.
for another time, yeah.
save it for another time. Okay. Demo Publican has the one-liner of Rickon died as he lived, irrelevantly. Which, so I guess is
Poor
true.
Rickon.
He didn't even have a line in all of the 6th season.
Yeah, he did.
No, he didn't. He did
Yes,
not
he
have a
did.
single line.
He had those lines like in, I don't know, what was it, like season
Think about Ned,
3?
right?
Not
Or
season
something?
6, though.
Oh, okay. He just kind of looks sad.
True.
I think it was a deal with
Nothing in
like
season 6.
like his contract where like he wouldn't come back for a speaking line unless he was given more money, and D&D were just like, we'll just have you back to just stand there or something. I don't know. I don't understand it. Hugo Z. Hackenbush. That baby was a great actor. I really believed he knew nothing.
What was the context?
Yeah.
And that was in reference to the Jon Snow baby.
Yeah,
right?
because he knew nothing, and that's what babies know.
Got him.
Not a heck of a lot, I guess, because they're babies. Monkey Man Dan said, George R.R. Martin, headed to the grocery store. What do I need? No, I can't start a list. Won't write a grocery list until Winds of Winter is done. Because he won't write a list. He won't write anything until Winds of Winter is done, except not a blogs about stuff.
Like football.
Also, Small Asian Chick had a gif of Jaime coming back to King's Landing, and it was, people liked it, and it was a nice edited gif as well, and had Jaime's face on it and stuff. And I can't really quote it because it doesn't exist in a word form. Trace of Bass says, my name is Davos, and I'm here to do two things. Kick ass and chop onions. And I just ran out of onions.
Really brutal.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what a great variation on a classic.
It's a classic thing. And our winner, though, of the Dolorous Ed Award goes to Alamo A, who says, and this is a pun on the North remembers, which is a northern phrase, I think it's ice magic rather than fire that could reattach a dick. After all, the North remembers.
Wow.
Woo! Yeah.
Yes.
Way to go, everybody.
Woo! Yeah.
And now we're going to go into Shiniest Tinfoil, written by user Dr. Grazulglotz, titled Dolorous Ed, Devourer of the Others. This is quite a post. The basic idea is that Ed, at one point, complains that his teeth aren't that great, and this person takes a very creative tact on that and decides that he's going to replace all his teeth with dragon glass and eat his way through the other army, killing them. It is...
Yes.
It is quintessential Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's our brand right there.
This is what we do sometimes. It is just... It's a crazy idea. There's no way it's going to come true, but it's a lot of fun. And it's just like thinking of Ed with dragon glass teeth trying to bite his way through an undead army. It's beautiful.
Well, the even funnier thing is in the first comment is someone pointing out that the sigil of House Tullet is a it's a shield with looks like it's very interpretive the way they look at it. They look at it as a bunch of sharp teeth coming down like they're obsidian teeth. So they're saying that this means something for Dolorous Ed.
I mean, yeah, I'm in.
It's very.
But, like, he wouldn't chew his way through.
Chew his way through.
Well, no. He wouldn't chew his way through, right? Because doesn't the dragon glass, like, cause the others to melt? So he would just really drink his way through.
Well, they also exploded when Sam stabbed them. So his mouth would just be exploding with obsidian.
And...
Right?
Well, if he's going to drink the others, then that makes sense, because he's in the Night's Watch.
Oh, my
so he's
God.
probably thirsty.
Yeah.
Michael, please go on.
Right.
You're blowing my mind.
No, that's it. That's the end.
Oh.
That's all I have.
Also,
just
Dolorous
a pun on
Ed apparently
thirsty.
is a Azor Ahai Reborn in this person's theory. So
Yes.
which makes a
makes
lot of
sense.
thematic and narrative sense, given all of the evidence that we don't have that Jon or Daenerys are Azor Ahai.
I mean, everyone knows Ed was born beneath a star and smoke and salt and all that. I mean, that's his life.
Is there proof that he wasn't?
It's because he's always
God.
hamming it up. He's a ham, you know?
Wow.
Eliana,
Wow.
post, please.
This post has so much going for it. And you know what I love is this post is like 3 quotes and
That's
maybe
it, yeah.
like 4 sentences. And it does so much to your imagination. You know, that's beautiful. That's like poetry.
It
really
rhymes.
is.
It rhymes.
Next up, we have our Post of the Year winner, 3 Villains, 3 Acts, and 3 Heads of the Dragon by Colty Harrison, which is sort of breaking down A Song of Ice and Fire in an unusual way, where you're looking at it in terms of who's the main villain of the story, instead of sort of breaking it down by books or looking at character arcs. And he starts off with Tywin, then he moves on to Ramsay, and he labels the third one being Euron Greyjoy, and he makes a point between them that they're escalatingly worse. Tywin is not a good person, but the bad things he does is generally for like a good purpose. Ramsay does a lot of bad things, and most of them are just because it makes him feel good. Euron is like trying to destroy the world, and he's going to do the worst things possible, and it's a very interesting escalation, and a way I'd never really thought of how George was constructing his villains in the way he wanted you to think about where his world was going.
It's really cool. I love the way that he thought about the series, and I think it makes a lot of sense. That you would have an escalation, like that's what you want to have in fiction, right? You want to have escalating villains, not necessarily like sticking with, the Lannisters being the bad guys the whole time around. And I think it's interesting, and I don't think George is going to do this for the Boltons necessarily, but for the Lannisters, he's at least contoured them to be more understandable. Now, he never gave Tywin Lannister a point of view character, or rather made him a point of view character, but he has Jaime and Cersei to kind of round out the Lannisters. So you do understand Tywin Lannister. I wouldn't necessarily say he's in it for the best reasons he might think he is. He might think he's the hero in his own story, but there's a lot of like very personal sides to Tywin Lannister and the way that he acts that makes him, it makes him a monster really, but it really focuses like his villainy a bit in the first 3 books or so. But having the Boltons as the villains in book 3 and 5. Really good point, talking about how Ramsay and Roose are not. You can't even and I take this back. As we're recording this, someone has written a defense of Roose Bolton post on the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. But most people can't and won't defend the Boltons. But Euron Greyjoy is like that. That kind of a Lovecraftian type villain. I don't know if that's a real thing. Michael can probably correct me because he's read actual Lovecraft and I haven't. But
Eldritch horror.
I know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He's this guy who like all these other characters like Tywin and even Ramsay. As evil as Ramsay gets, like he's still it's like mundane evil. It's like Charles Manson kind of stuff. But Euron Greyjoy is like dabbling in dark secrets, and you almost get the feeling like he's the kind of character George is really interested in. Like he's the high fantasy character who's stepping into the story now, who's gonna actually meddle with like strange dark beasts and things like that.
Call forth the Kraken.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something this post really broke down really well, was that escalating, not just of how horrible these people are, but also how they get closer and closer to that like supernatural darkness that we're building towards.
I was gonna say it's just like upping the stakes. You go from like, oh, this individual like pain of this family, and then how he affects this other family, specifically regarding Tywin, and then Ramsay faces like poses a much bigger threat to, well, a lot of things. And then Euron Greyjoy poses, I'm gonna just gloss over that point. Anyways, but Euron Greyjoy poses like a threat to like literally like the world, the fabric of reality, and it's cool to see like how it's building up. It does concern me because I absolutely love this idea of the 3-act structure, but it concerns me because I don't know if any of you remember this post from Aerys 2 Targaryen previously, where he talks about we're not even through Act 2 yet. And I'm like, maybe
But we should
not.
have been through Act 2, because the Dance of Dragons was supposed to conclude with the Battle of Winterfell, which would have...
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think Ramsay's downfall...
Yeah,
it'll be early in the winter now, probably.
Correct.
Yeah.
I wonder if we're going to get another big villain. If it's just going to be Euron the way out, are we going to get the Night's King? Is that what he's building us up to? That we're going to see a truly, truly horrific character, like, completely devolve from humanity? Like, is that where we're going with this? Is that where the escalation goes?
Isn't that where it's always been going?
Well, Euron doesn't...
Yeah,
that's what I always thought, too, is, like...
But we'll actually see him. So far,
much more plausible. There are much more plausible theories now that Euron is maybe not a that rather that Euron might be an unwitting agent of the others. Maybe he's not like actively like taking commands from the others, but he's doing their will pretty well. I mean, he's just spreading destruction up and down Westeros, and even in Marine now, and in Essos and everything like that. So,
and I will say this, in a lot of like Eldritch stories, the human who tries to meddle with things and like, you know, bend the dark things to his will usually ends up like consumed or possessed by them or something like that. You know, like taken over by the true evil who's behind them all. So that could be one potential fate for Euron, is like, you know, he tries too hard to be the leader of the others, and the actual leaders of the others, you know, I don't know, fry his brain or whatever with their space lasers.
Yeah, so kudos to you, Colty Harrison, because we're now even talking about and debating about your post months and months and months afterwards.
I love this post.
So,
I voted for this.
Keep up the good work, dude.
Getting back on track. This year's winner of Comment of the Year was actually one of my nominations. It's from After the Horse, about how George R. R. Martin primed readers to hate Sansa. And what I like about this is it really just thinks about how George R. R. Martin structures his story. And, you know, as we've talked about at the beginning of this podcast, Sansa is one of my favorite POVs, and how, you know, the way that George R. R. Martin wrote it is that Arya is given information that Sansa is not, and that causes the reader to think, well, this Sansa girl's pretty useless, while Arya's pretty great. So yeah, I'm very glad that won.
Yeah, I love this comment. And it's kind of funny because it only has like 12 upvotes, which I think is great.
That's true.
Hidden gems.
For, right, to like highlight hidden gems. But yeah, no, I think it changes the way you look at the books a little bit, because, you know, for me, you start to look at it and like, oh, well, yeah, right, certain characters have access to information, or we have access, rather, to information the characters don't, and that shapes the way we think about them and who we like and who we dislike and all that. And, you know, again, kind of like a simple, quick comment that really, you know, gives you a lot to think about.
It's true. It's also a good point that you're really primed to not like Sansa, not only just from the difference in their POVs, but, you know, from Arya. Arya doesn't like her. If you like Arya and Arya doesn't like Sansa, then you might start to transfer that even before you really read what's going on in her head and understanding her. And you see that even from Jon. Jon is not particularly fond of Sansa. That's another example of how you're kind of trained to think this way and not really give her a chance.
It's true that's Martin takes Sansa in a Game of Thrones and just makes her to be the dumb one, kind of.
Yes.
And makes her to be the person that informs Cersei on Ned's conspiracy to leave the city or whatnot. But he also makes her understandable too. Understandable reasons. And even though you're like, man, I really don't like this person, it's clear by A Clash of Kings that Sansa realizes that she made a mistake. And even though she's still #worst Stark, it's still it's still something that's interesting to consider, that Martin sets her up to be, for readers not to like her a whole lot, but then suddenly makes her like realize like the choices that she's made have a consequential impact on how she's going to proceed through the rest of the story. So by the end of A Game of Thrones, she almost pushes Joffrey off the ledge. By A Clash of Kings, she's the subject of abuse, and verbal and physical abuse and humiliation. And it kind of like, again, twists that sort of feeling where we're like, yeah, we're upset obviously that Sansa did a real bad thing in A Game of Thrones, and did a couple bad things, as well as created something in her, kind of embodied this type of character that was in fantasy that we're conditioned not to like. but he kind of like twists that a little bit and kind of makes her a bit more sympathetic going forward in the narrative.
Is she still the worst Stark, though?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, then. Just want to be clear about this.
Yeah, of course she's the worst
Well,
Stark.
you're consistent on that. Yeah.
He sticks to his guns.
Can't blame you.
So we come to the best catch, which focuses on a scene from the trailer. And this is either a really high point in the subreddit or a really low point. It's a little of both. In which we have two images. I'm going to just describe the post because there aren't words. We have two images. One of Podrick Payne being held in a chokehold, and then we zoom into the ear of the person who's chokeholding him, CSI Miami style, only to find out that it is in fact the ear of Bronn.
What?
Yeah. And it's really just, something beautiful about humanity is that just like every single fingerprint is unique, so is every ear. And you just know.
I'm gonna fact check that. I'm not sure.
Citation needed.
Yeah, so anyways, that award goes to Gabias, a cup of coffee.
Great username too.
It's really good.
Yeah, I don't really know what it's referencing, but this was
buy
truly...
us a cup of coffee.
I think it's a thing from Arrested Development.
Yeah, I thought it was an Arrested Development thing too. Oh, maybe it's Joe
Go Bias Industries.
Joe Bias.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway,
Bias,
so
I mean, it's a pun.
this was truly amazing. He was right. It was Bronn. It was not Podrick being kidnapped. It was him doing some bro bonding time. But
you gotta choke out your friends. I think put them in the sleeper hold. You put them to sleep.
How you bond.
Then you know
right?
your friends.
Yeah, that's a guy thing, right?
Yeah.
That's a thing we do.
I think what I liked most about this is that it's just like it's so natural that this actually happened. That people were watching the trailer and they're like, "Oh, who's grabbing Pod? I bet it's Bronn." And someone was like, "Well, I bet there's a way to find out."
They
Didn't this get picked up? This got picked up by like a couple of sources and not sources, but like news outlets and stuff too. I couldn't tell you which ones.
Yeah,
well, I know I've seen it.
Yeah,
I remember listening to the Storm of Spoilers podcast, which is another great podcast you guys should listen to.
Big shout out.
If you like spoilers, all sorts of spoilers for every type of movie or TV show. And they were bringing this up about this. Oh, so I saw in this Reddit thread, and these are people that are Vanity Fair writers. They write for film school rejects and things like that. So these types of people are like reading the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit, which is really cool. And like I like this catch because the top comment, and this is funny, the top comment is comparing earlobes now, huh? What have we become? Well, no sound, no fury. Your top comment is incorrect because this guy was totally right. Like, that's the funny thing about this is that people are like, want to dismiss people for researching these things and coming up with these ideas. But this guy is right. Like, sorry to say, like we've become the type of people that can like figure out that Bronn's ear is the ear that's grabbing Podrick Payne. So I think that's a cool thing. And I do remember this trailer too because this was also the trailer where Asha Greyjoy Yara Greyjoy. Yara Greyjoy was there was another catch, and I think this might have been Michael's catch actually, was that one of the people that she was with had the slave tattoo, right, of the tear.
Oh yeah, actually I do remember seeing
that. That was your catch. So I mean, like that trailer was full of all sorts of great catches. So kudos to Go Buy Us a Cup of Coffee. Great username, by the way. I just want to reemphasize how it's like it's leveled, it's layered like an onion.
I still think it's Joe Bias, like Job from Arrested
Development.
Go buy us.
Go buy us a cup of coffee.
I just want everything to be about Arrested
Development. The only
Development.
way it makes sense.
You need to research this and post this so that you can get best catch next year.
Ooh, maybe he'll respond to us and tell us how it's actually pronounced. Hard G or soft G? Hard G, soft G. Tell us.
Right. Please confirm.
Leave it in the comments.
Let's start a hashtag soft G.
Yeah. Smash that like button. Go buy us a cup of coffee.
But yeah, back to OP. I'm looking through the discussion, and I like how he go up here. I forgot this part that other people had posited that it might be Bronn taking Podrick, but he says, "I know most people already thought it was, but I figured this is proof." And then he explains why it's a little bit. The ear is a little bit different on the left than on the right because it's from a different perspective. And then he points out that it's true because you can see a little ridge in the ear where a V is formed. And the reason you can see that is that his head is tilted back. So
that's intense.
I gotta be honest, I don't think I've ever paid attention to a person's ear in my life.
I pay attention to my partner's ears a lot.
That he came up with this is just magical, and I love that this happened.
Now, what would be great is if in the Winds of Winter we get like an in-depth description of Bronn's ear, like up close.
What if this is how we ID Ashara Dane in the current story?
Stop. So the next topic that we had is the Cleganebowl Cup, which is that topic which got us the most quote-unquote hype. And the winner of that was Behind the Quaith for her Ashford tourney theory and Sansa hype. Look, you know me. I don't like Sansa Stark a whole lot. I understand her arc. What? I understand what George is doing with her as a character, but I don't really enjoy her story a whole lot. Still, this theory did make me a little bit excited for Sansa's future Winds of Winter story. Adding in the Ashford tourney theory, which has this whole idea that Sansa's tourney of the Winged Knights in the Winds of Winter is going to mirror the great tourney that starts in the Hedge Knight, which is the Duncan Egg's first story, is a really cool theory. So some really cool stuff about it, about how Harry the Heir might die from his wounds for a trial with a battle, and who'd be defending or fighting against him. And if Sweet Robin dies, Littlefinger might be accused, and Harry fights to defend or to convict him. Different things like that are kind of cool ways that tie the story back to like Duncan Egg, where Dunk is trying to defend the honor of Tansel from Prince Aerion Targaryen, or Aerion Brightflame, as he eventually became known as. So I really enjoyed this theory. I got a little bit hype about Sansa's story, which is hard for me to do because I don't like her a whole lot because she's still #worst Stark. But do you guys have any thoughts about this post?
Well, I like how I mean, it is sort of I think Behind the Quaith says this in the post, but it's like a bit of a rehash of the Ashford tourney post, but also included a bit about the Hound coming back to protect Sansa at some point, and how that might play in to the aftermath of the the tourney of the Winged Knights, which I think partially contributes to the Cleganebowl hype of this post, in that it does have to do it does suggest that Sansa and the Hound are going to come back together, and I think that was a very nice addition to it, and Behind the Quaith really tied that in very well.
One thing I especially loved about this post is it's a meta topic in a way. It's how you use the older stories for the current one. She's taking something from an Ashford tourney, which happened long ago, and she's applying it to the current story. And this is sort of a running theme that George does, and this is a really great example of it, where he takes like characters like Robert Baratheon. He's supposed to be like Aegon the Unworthy, and he does this for things you're not really sure of in the current story, characters you didn't get to know, and then he uses these novellas and the World of Ice and Fire in order to inform them. And this is an excellent example of using that kind of process that I really enjoyed.
So one of the cool things that we also had this year is we instituted the King Jaehaerys Award, and this was an award for the crow who most consistently fills our sub with high-quality theory posts for everyone to discuss. And who better to win this award than my actual IRL, at least for Facebook friend in real life, Lucifer Lightbringer. Lucifer Lightbringer, if you guys don't know, he's one of these guys that thinks on a different level than most anyone else. Now, I have probably shed a lot of ink on A Song of Ice and Fire myself, but this guy gets the series in ways that are really, really unique and insightful. The one I really loved, and I think it might have been his most recent one, was where he was talking about, or not his most recent one, but his second most recent one, where he was talking about how Cold Hands as a character was meant to foreshadow Jon Snow and what Jon Snow will come back like, and how Jon Snow returning like Cold Hands, where he doesn't need warmth or food or sleep, is perfect, because that sets Jon up as this hero when he ends up fighting the others and dealing with a long night, because he doesn't need any of the necessities that the average person will need. He'll have everything he already has because he's kind of an undead, ice zombie. I mean, not totally an ice zombie, and he goes into this a bit more in his essay, but I couldn't think of anyone better to win the award than Lucifer Lightbringer.
Yeah, I feel like all of his ideas that I read are always that original and like something I've never seen before, no matter what it is. Or it goes into a depth I've never seen before.
Literally things I've never thought of. He's like drawing connections between like the moon and this moon, and like there's like dragons coming out of this one, and it all makes sense. And that's the part that is really unique about him. A lot of people draw some really crazy things out of this story, but everything he comes up with, it continues to line up. And how he does that, and his knowledge base that he comes from to make up these kind of theories, really blows my mind every time I read them. And they should get more upvotes, probably.
Definitely.
And you also just feel like you learn something new when you read his stuff. Like
Yes.
I haven't kept up with as much stuff, but when I first like saw him and his blog, I was like, whoa, this guy's like pulling from mythology from all over the world and introducing me to cool new astronomy facts. And that's what makes something like really engrossing, just having something that your audience feels like they got something new out of it.
Well, the cool thing about him is, and I hope I'm not like revealing any information, he's not like a science guy by trade. He's got a really cool job, and I won't say what it is because I don't want to say too much about him, because we are IRL Facebook friends.
I mean,
no
he's
doxing.
Lucifer Lightbringer. He's like fighting against heaven, right? That's his job.
He's
right,
a fallen
exactly.
angel. Yeah.
So
yeah.
a fallen angel
That's
who
an
rebelled
occupation.
against God. Yeah, but what I find is like so unique and cool about the Song of Ice and Fire fandom, if like I could talk meta for a second, is that you have all of these people that come from very different backgrounds, but some things about this universe like really compels people and like grabs their imagination and makes them write these 12,000, 15,000 word essays for things maybe they're not even trained to do. And I think that's really awesome. And I think Lucifer Lightbringer embodies the best of that in our fandom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Very deserving of an award named after a very wise king.
He's also
Absolutely.
very stylish.
Oh, yeah.
Lucifer Lightbringer or King Jaehaerys?
Both.
Yeah. Oh, and if you guys, he actually has a podcast too, and
yes,
I'd be
you
remiss
should
not
listen
to
to
mention that if you have long car rides like I do to work every day and back, great way to burn some time and learn some new stuff.
It's very similar to like Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, except about stuff you've never literally thought about before.
Absolutely.
Well, for our next Best of award is Best Analysis that didn't have to do with the character. And our winner for that one was Ellen the Melon, who won for their post Why Season 6 Spoiled Almost Nothing, which was a short analysis of, indeed, why Season 6 probably spoiled very little from the books. And they go through the whole list, of things that happened in Season 6 that will probably not happen in The Winds of Winter, like Stannis losing the battle, Jon's resurrection as a get-out-of-jail-free card, Meereen lives happily ever after under the rule of Daario Naharis, Tommen banning trial by combat, Cersei skipping her trial and blowing up the Sept, Tommen jumping out a window, just all of these things that happen in Season 6 that, made sense for Season 6 and the way that the showrunners took the show, but that just there's no way that they can happen in the books without a huge course correction, and there's no reason to see that course correction coming when we have other plot lines that are way more exciting, like Quentin Martell coming back from the dead, riding a dragon,
and writing the pink letter too.
Yeah, oh yeah, Quentin wrote the pink letter from Dragonback. Yeah.
Yes.
No, yeah. So this was a great post, and you can see why it won, because it's what everyone wanted to see. It was like, no, don't worry about it. It's okay. Season 6 didn't spoil it for us.
Yeah, I like this post a lot, and I tried to write something similar. But I think that Ellen the Melon wrote it a lot better than I did, because he was very succinct and got right to the point, which I love about posts, when they get right to the point and don't just kind of beat around the bush and write these complex introductions, which might mean that I don't like my own stuff. But that's a greater issue at work here. This post was really cool, talking about the different things that, season 6 didn't really spoil the Winds of Winter, and I happen to come across and really agree with the point of that post, because there's so many things about the books right now that are already so divergent from the show, in terms of the plot, in terms of characters, where they are, how they're characterized differently in both the book and the show, that it's difficult for me to say that you see a whole lot of plot spoilers. Now, there are some, like, for instance, like we talked about before, from Lucifer Lightbringer's post about the Children of the Forest created the Others. That seems like that's a pretty definite book spoiler, given all the evidence that we have in the books itself. But a lot of the other ones, like Cersei blowing up the Great Sept, something like that, David and Dan, or I believe it was David Benioff, although it could have been Dan Weiss, but I think it was David Benioff who said, I was talking with Dan about this, and we were trying to figure out how to write this scene, so we sort of invented this, which to me seems like confirmation that this is something that George has not told them is going to happen in the Winds of Winter, that Cersei isn't going to blow up the Great Sept of Baelor in the books itself. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting, because I think people are like, well, why should I even read the books? I already have seen season 6 and I know what's going to happen. But, Ellen the Melon's post really makes it clear that no, you actually have not read what George has in mind, and that you're going to have a huge amount of difference between what you saw in 2016 and what you'll read about, hopefully, in 2017.
Yeah.
So another thing that is great about this post is that when you look at it, a lot of what they talk about are just these, these are huge twists, or it's this big shocking moment. And that doesn't really touch on something that a lot of us, including myself, love about the story and the books, which is the character development. As Ellen the Melon points out, Jon's resurrection does not significantly change him. It's just a get out of Night's Watch free card. And that's something that we can depend on the books to still talk about. What does this actually mean for a person to go through something like this? To have been completely betrayed by all their brothers and then to come back to life.
Exactly. I mean, he has a very short amount of time where Jon is kind of bummed out that death is not as great as he thought it was going to be. And then Sansa convinces him and he goes off and becomes just like the king in the north. That's a very big revelation for him, and he just kind of glosses it over because we got to beat the bad Boltons. And
it's part of the constraints of the show, right? I mean,
exactly.
10 episodes, whereas George has, if Admiral Curd is correct in his that the Winds of Winter is going to be this even larger than 1,500 manuscript pages, he's going to have many chapters from Jon's perspective, talking about the evolution in his character and his psychology.
And the last point here on Ellen the Melon's post is about how they've sort of removed a lot of Bloodraven. Now, his impact on the current story is sort of hard to pin down because of the nature of the kind of character he is, but George has gone out of his way to give us tons of information about this character, show him in Duncan Egg, just really giving us sort of all the ways he's impacting the story. And it's just because Dan and Dave decided that wasn't a good thing to show on TV because it's hard doesn't mean it's not important. And I think that's a really good message for a lot of these. Just because Dan and Dave don't like it or didn't include it doesn't mean it's not important.
Like Quentin?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that too.
The Blackfire thing.
Moving on to a much lighter note than that, we have the funniest post category, which goes to Holloway Division for Ed thought love was only true in fairy tales. It's very simple, straightforward love story, boy in the Night's Watch. Let's do his TLDR. He's a mule boy from the Vale. She's a mule girl from the Vale. They both had given up on love, but much like their mules, love hasn't given up on them. Rated PG-13. So, well, he even said it's rated PG-13. So, you can take your kids to see Ed and Maya Stone fall in love.
I'm just happy for both of them. Maya's had a tough life, so has Ed, and this is really something I want to see happen. Best of luck to you, crazy kids.
Are you serious right now?
No.
You want to see... Okay, good. Just wanted to make
Wait,
sure.
you don't want to see them fall in love?
Oh, no.
No,
Not with
love
each other. Mia's clearly going to be
What?
one of the great bastards with Gendry and Edric Storm. Come on.
Right,
And
he's a Targaryen bastard, right? Secret Targaryen bastard?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
this is how it's all
Well,
going.
yeah, I mean, Ed. It's going to be really hard to make out if Ed has those Valyrian steel teeth or whatever.
Ooh.
Right.
I don't
But
see
he
how
also
those
has
two sort of.
silvery gray hair, right? He has got gray hair. At least all the pictures show him. So is that silvery gray hair, like the Targaryen silvery gray hair with those
Ooh,
obsidian
like
teeth?
platinum
If only we
blonde.
had more novellas about their physical appearance.
The
Yeah.
Toilet Saga. I want this.
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
Targaryen.
It's a great post. I don't know how he thought of
yeah.
this. This is the title, just the follow through the punchline. It's great. Good job, Holloway.
Yeah.
Well done.
Even have a parody song written for it. We're not going to sing it. All right, great.
sure?
So moving. Yeah, I'm
Eliana,
very
do you
sure.
want to sing?
No, I don't want to sing.
Okay, fair enough.
For best character analysis, we have Yezin IRL in real life as the winner for his post Bran the Body Snatcher. We need to talk about human skin changing. And this is a really great character analysis about, who the Bran is that we see throughout this whole story. We start out with this picture of innocence as children are often portrayed in literature. But, as Bran loses his ability to walk, even though he gains super awesome magic powers, he still has that dream of being a knight. And he ties this into Jon Snow's character development, and talks about how, we've seen Bran already do human skin changing with Hodor, and we know that it's not a good thing. We see from Hodor's reaction that it isn't beneficial to him. It hurts him. And then
It's
we
really
see,
horrific.
yeah. And then, as you talk about in your Varamir essays, and as Yezin talks about, this is something that's completely frowned upon by society because of it's so horrific. And then he talks about how Bran is just so desperate for still wanting that dream of being a knight that perhaps he'd even stoop so low to skin change someone that he believes is his half-brother. Right now, maybe, he'll probably find out different later on, but skin change his half-brother and take over his body in order to live that out. Because, as he points out, Bran's life sucks, and he has every reason to want to escape it.
That's a really good point. And this is a really great analysis of Bran and using sort of the practical details of warging and skin changing and trying to make a prediction on, which is really hard because it seems like every time we learn something new about how these processes work, it completely blows the whole thing apart. And we don't know where Bran is really going. He's already, in Varamir's chapter, he makes a point of listing a bunch of taboos in their society, in skin changing society. Bran's already broken all of them. He's already there. So how far can he go? And this is I think it's a really dark take on where Bran is going as a character. Not necessarily wrong. It's just, I'm not sure I agree with it, but I think it's a really interesting way of looking at the character.
I really like this too. And the thing about it is, I think a lot of people have this idea that when characters are going dark, it's just it's a radical character transition for them. But it's not. It's realistic.
Sure.
When Tyrion goes dark in A Dance with Dragons, so to speak, although not so to speak, he does some really awful, terrible things in the book itself.
Yeah.
It is coming from a place that makes it not acceptable or sympathetic, but makes it understandable. And the same thing comes with Bran. If Bran is warging Hodor already, or skin changing Hodor already, that's something that's not a good thing, but you understand it because he's broken, because he can't walk and he wants to walk again. And it's sort of the same thing with Summer too, but there are some ethical boundaries that Bran seems to be crossing because of some understandable imbalances and unfairnesses in his life. So we're yeah, I totally understand why you want to be in Hodor. But,
Yeah. Right.
it's
Yeah,
still
no,
not,
I think...
it's still not ethical or good or moral,
Right. You guys have touched on it great, so I feel like I don't need to add too much, but but that's exactly what this post does so well. Is like, it comes back to Bran, his dreams from like the first chapter in Game of Thrones, where he just wants to be a knight in the Kingsguard. And when you build on that kind of evidence, you're gonna have something that's really strong, even if like you said, maybe the conclusion I don't see happening, but the groundwork is there, and this post really lays that out very well, I think. Our next category is Best Show Prediction Gone Wrong, of which there were many. We had a lot of predictions, actually, I felt like, for this season. But the winner, and this one I actually nominated, so I felt really good about this winning, was Mega Breath's theory that Syrio Forel was coming back in Season 6, which was based on this... I don't know, it looks like something out of X-Files, like the MS Paint work on the...
It's a lot of arrows
on the screenshots here. Yeah, exact color-coded arrows and labels and stuff. The promo photo from Season 6, Episode 8 showed a figure in the background with curly hair, a sort of bulgy shirt with shoulder pads, and that's it, in the background of one of the shots. And the subreddit became convinced for about 5 days or so that this was Syrio Forel, that Syrio Forel was coming back. I gotta admit, even I was a little sold on this. I thought maybe it could be like a Force ghost kind of thing, like Arya sees him but he's not really there. I wanted to believe, I wanted to believe. I was convinced, so it made sense to me at this one.
Isn't this aided by that whole remember there was that video where they were talking about these are the characters that have died, or in memorial of the characters that have died in Game of Thrones, and because Syrio Forel was not featured in it, suddenly everyone was like, whoa, he's gonna come back. We didn't see him die on screen. He's here. And so like you said, for 5 days everyone was like, he's here.
Finally, somebody's coming back. A good thing's gonna happen in the story. Syrio's coming back. We all love Syrio. And it's like, oh, never mind, it was an extra. Just some guy.
And it really did build on a lot of... Oh, yeah, and I'm looking back through all the comments, and at one point the actor who played Syrio, like just before the episode, shared his Facebook memory of being on set with Maisie Williams for the first time. And it was like at the same time that this MS Paint job was coming out. So it was like, oh man. And he was photographed in Belfast hanging out with the cast. So to me, that was like the subreddit at its purest, most distilled form. Just making up these crazy ideas that, the idea that Syrio's alive has been around for 20 years, as long as Syrio's been dead. And then jumping in with this MS Paint stuff and everything, it was great. That was fantastic. Yeah.
George R. Martin doesn't squash those theories either. Doesn't he also say things like, I'm going to let people draw their own conclusions regarding Syrio's death and the way that scene's written?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, who knows? Syrio is jacking.
Our audio engineers bring up a good point. Is this maybe Game of Thrones trolling the fan base by making somebody show up on set that has the outline of a character we all want to see back? They've said they've done this kind of thing before. This may be exactly what happened.
They're in our head.
That's a good point, kid.
They're definitely in my head. They got me. Yeah.
I wanted to. That was a very funny post, and I really loved the all the different color coding and different things like that. But I wanted to bring up one post in particular that was that didn't win, but that was nominated. Which was the Lady Crane is not who we think she is post.
Yeah.
You guys remember that one?
That was a good one. I was convinced.
That was a really good.
So and I know we haven't done this for any of the other posts so far of best of runners up, but this is one that I just absolutely loved, which is this is something that didn't happen obviously, but I thought it was a really interesting idea. Was that Lady Crane was secretly a faceless man that was a part of the plan in order to get Arya to see where she actually was, to determine whether she actually was no one or was just faking it. And so they had this whole person there in the person of Lady Crane who was going to take the Isambaro role, which, as we know in The Winds of Winter, is the guy who's running the play in the Winds of Winter that Arya becomes a part of, and we know that he's at some level, and we don't know all of it yet, is done by the Faceless Men. He's a Faceless Man who is a part of the Faceless Man training program in some venue. We don't know how yet, but definitely something interesting. And unfortunately, that didn't become true. Tragically, that seemed like it would have been a better way to have written her character, but she ends up just being offed in a very non-real. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, didn't really generate any emotion for me that she had died.
It was so fast. They just killed it instantly. I was like,
pretty ignominious.
Yeah, all right.
Yep. So, transitioning from best show prediction gone wrong to best theory debunking, the winner for that award is the esteemed Wurthead, otherwise known as Adam Whitehead of the Wurt Zone fame, and also a moderator on Westeros.org, for his debunking the immortal conception that if George R. R. Martin dies, that his notes will be destroyed. This is something that I even had thought was the case, is that George had said or had written at some point that if he dies before he finishes the books, then he's going to end up just destroying all his notes or whatnot. Not the case, actually. Robert Jordan had said something like that, and apparently it was at a convention that both Robert Jordan and George R. R. Martin were at, where they were talking about it, and Wirt had theorized this is where this misattribution might have come from. Really good debunking of all that. It seems like, I think probably the most important part of the post is, and I'll read this verbatim, what George R. R. Martin once said at a convention, possibly at Worldcon 2012 or 13, with a long-suffering look, is that he was in the same situation as Robert Jordan, that is being diagnosed with a terminal illness, but with a couple years warning, then he would strongly consider writing a detailed outline or even talking to another writer about doing it. He knows a few. But it'd have to be that very specific set of circumstances. So, seems to me that George is would be not exactly thrilled if he found out that he was, unfortunately going to be passing or whatnot, but he would consider writing out stuff in order to get them the book out. So good debunking of something that even I myself had believed at one point, and we'll see where it goes from there. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's something that I didn't know either.
No, that was very new to me. Yeah, I mean, I think we all were in the same boat, like the whole subreddit, where we thought that, if George R. R. Martin suddenly passed, well, anyway, if he passed away, then, we were just out of luck. Yeah. So, yeah, it was very, very informative, and I think made a lot of sense, right? I mean, we shouldn't necessarily take everything George R. R. Martin says as gospel 100% forever for the rest of time, because he doesn't.
That's where he changes his mind.
All right, now our next category in the best ofs was for the best flair. Since of course people can have their own, custom flares full of puns and all that. So Aaron, could you run through the list of nominees for the best flair award?
Why,
for this
certainly.
Year?
I have the privilege to introduce best flair. So for best flair, I'm going to do the nominees first. First up is Every Planet We Reach, who has House Giant's Bane and says the North members. That's of course a pun on the North remembers. It's pretty funny. Next up is the user Purple Manny, who says they rollerin', they hatin'. That's about the song that's out there. It's a pun on the God of Fire. His name is R'hllor. Yep. So the next one nominee is from U20 person who says, "Not my bark. Shara loves my bark." I don't even get that one. Could somebody explain that to me?
Blood Raven and Shira Seastar.
Oh, because he's in the wood.
There you got it. You're there.
Okay. That's pretty funny.
And it's a joke about cat.
Yeah,
cat,
so
not my
many
hair.
levels.
Ned loves my hair.
There are a number of levels. It's just above my head.
And wood.
It's
Wow.
Next up is Deandrew, whose flair is House Wool of the Mountain Clans of the North. It's the one with the buckets. It has a blue background. I remember that because I made all the Flair, and I have them all seared into my memory in a very dark place. Anyway, the Flair it's pronounced bouquet. Anybody? Oh, it's pronounced bouquet, but it's like a bucket, so it makes sense.
And I believe that's a reference to a TV show that I'm not familiar with, but that's what the user said, is that it's a reference to a TV show where I think someone has the last name Bucket and insists that it's pronounced bouquet or something
It's
like
like Joe
that.
TV
Dirt and
show.
Joe Dirte.
Ah, I got it. I've seen that when I was like in 8th
There you
grade.
go.
Okay, now moving on to next one is Steve490, who says, I'm Aragon's tax collector. Yep. And Yosov Unpavaso.
Yo soy un payaso.
Just what she said. It has the flair of pretty fly for a crow's eye, which is about another song pun got going on there. Okay. And our winner for the best flair of 2016 goes to user Brutusness, who says, phrase are food, not friends. It has the Mannerly flair.
Oh,
That's their winner.
bravo.
I would give
What a good
a
flair.
clap to that one. Yay.
We did it.
Okay.
Clap.
The next award in the best ofs was the Duncan the Tall Award, which was a new one this year, for the crow with the greatest commitment to substantively engaging with other people's theories throughout the year. And the Duncan the Tall Award went to Black of Hair and Heart 2, which is the same account as Black of Hair and Heart, who deleted his original account. Black of Hair and Heart has been around here forever. I can't really remember when. I can't really remember a time without Black of Hair and Heart on this board. And I think this was a fitting award because, for one thing, he shows up in every thread and always is knowledgeable, but also because he's written quite a lot about the Kingsguard, and I know Dunk is one of his favorite characters, and so it just seems like a fitting award, sort of this Lord Commander, noble user sort of award. I don't know, have you guys interacted with Black of Hair and Heart much?
Yeah, I really like him a lot. I had forgotten that he was writing about the Kingsguard. If it's the same Black of Hair and Heart,
Yeah, it is.
without the two, which we're assuming that you are, but
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, those were some fantastic posts, and I always find him hawking in my posts and hawking out against someone who's saying something that's hashtag objectively incorrect, and I really enjoy that because I think that he's someone that was in the fandom, if I'm not mistaken, during the Dance with Dragons timeline, waiting for the book to come around. So he's the guy that has kind of a moderate perspective, so to speak, in that he's both he's not the guy who's like super optimistic, like that George is writing The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring at the same time, and things like, George is an extremely fast writer and his pace will pick up. Like, he's very kind of grounded in that reality that he experienced for George's timeline for Dance of Dragons. At the same time, he will shoot down people who are like, well, George is just he hasn't written a single word since A Dance with Dragons.
That was an excellent impression, yeah.
So I really enjoy interacting with him. Obviously, we disagree on things, and that's fine. But that's good, because I enjoy finding people that I can disagree with on substantive issues and substantive things, and not just on kind of like fluff, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's always tends to be like a voice of reason, I've found. Like, I'm not sure I've ever seen him be like really just like super pig-headed about anything. In general, very much like a reasonable guy. Like you were saying, like, shows up and he's like, no, George has been writing the book. Yes, it won't be out this year, but yeah, maybe he's our subreddit cooler, like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse.
What does that mean?
He's a bouncer.
Yeah, you know,
something. Patrick Swayze style bouncer.
he diffuses the situations. Maybe I don't know. I sort of lost the metaphor there. It's the Duncan the Tall Award, not the Patrick Swayze Award. So he is
Maybe
our
next
Duncan.
year the Patrick Swayze Award.
We should.
I think of Black and Hair of Heart mostly with having to do with the weekly Q&A threads. Those are his domain.
He's
Yeah, he's in
fantastic.
those a lot.
Those are his. You walk in there, you are walking into his domain. He's kind of like very knowledgeable. Sometimes can be like a little bit Marwyn to Sam when he's expunging his immense amounts of knowledge. But it's amazing. I don't know how he knows this much about the king. I've actually gone to him for help with previous theories when I was trying to track down the different members of the Kingsguard. And really knowledgeable person.
Yeah,
it's
he's the
super
guy to go
impressive.
to.
Everything he does on the board.
For sure.
Congratulations on Duncan the Tall, aka Patrick Swayze.
The Patrick Swayze Award. That's what I'm calling it. I don't care what
Patrick
anyone
Swayze
The
else
Patrick
says.
Swayze Award.
I hope he likes Patrick Swayze as much as he likes Duncan.
Well,
Who
I think
couldn't?
that's one.
Yeah.
So for our very final award, it's our community project award, and this is actually a really cool thing because back in the fall 2016, I was bored one day at work, and I happened to be talking with Yoke Boy from Radio Westeros, in which he had said that, "Oh, you're George R. R. Martin. Here's this picture of George R. R. Martin." And I was like, "Oh, ha ha, delete your account." But
I love you, boy.
But it was funny because I saw the picture and I was like, I remember this image from somewhere, and it was from the John Oliver Tonight Show from 2014, in which George R. R. Martin is interviewed on the show via Skype. It looks like. And he's in his office, so he's in the place where he's actually writing something. So at the time, like I remember seeing the John Oliver post because, you know, George R. R. Martin, I'm always interested in something, whatever he's doing, but kind of glossing it over at the time. But returning back to it, you know, just a few months ago, I was struck because I was like, I wonder what he's writing. So I was like, oh, okay, let me just throw up this sort of like jokey post, see what happens. So I wrote this post called Enhance. You know, kind of the way they do it in like CSI, like where you can like take a video image and like enhance it, and suddenly someone's face is, you know, completely digitally clear, and you could tell who was the murderer of some
Or
sort
an
of.
ear.
Or who was
Or
grabbing
science.
Podrick,
Or an
yeah.
ear. Yeah.
Or from Super Troopers.
Or from Super
From Super Troopers. Yeah.
Enhance. Yeah. So I threw this post up, and then all of a sudden I started getting responses, and like people were like pulling stuff out. And as it turned out, the person who was the most responsible is one of the hosts of this show, who deciphered probably the biggest part of the text. So
Yeah.
Glass Table Girl, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. What a loser. I didn't. You said that
I didn't
you
say it, I
like came
implied it.
upon this when you were bored at work. I didn't know I was bored at work until you brought this to me, and then I was like, yeah. Let's do it. And turns out, you know, a lot of us had a knack for deciphering squiggles on a screen. What was fun about this is that it was coordinating a bunch of efforts with like the entire fandom. Like we were pulling responses from people on Twitter, people who were responding, some people from this ASOIAF Facebook group that that you're also part of. Yeah, we're going with ASOIAF.
It's pronounced
And then,
as
as well as, you know, a lot of people on the subreddit, you know, a lot of them had already contributed before, and so just compiling those things so that we could try to make a coherent thing. My favorite part is that Lady Gwyn of Radio Westeros took a mirrorish lens, aka a magnifying glass, to her computer because you can't enhance it enough on the computer because like the resolution isn't enough. So she just takes a magnifying glass to make it bigger and easier because, you know, real life has fantastic resolution. And somehow we put together most of the thing.
Yeah, honestly.
So congratulations to everyone.
So what was
Thank
it? So
you.
what did we find out? Because I think we haven't actually said what it is, and we did say at the beginning of the podcast that there are spoilers for the Winter Winter and for season 6 and season 7 of Game of Thrones. So you want to tell us what it was?
Yeah, the furthest we got was it's an excerpt from an Asha chapter, and should I just like read it aloud?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's
Let's
gonna
do
be
this.
very silly.
Live
Some of these
reading.
words are tentative, which is why I have question marks and like brackets all over it. But it goes, "Daughter of the Lord Reaper of Pike, blank 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 blank." Asha thought as she took a blank 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 of at the land. The leader of the enemy wore silvered plate and mail inlaid with detail of lapis lazuli. The crest of his helmet, war helm, was tall, fashioned in the shape of the twin towers of House Frey. Before him rode 3 banner bearers. One bore the stag and lion standard of King Tommen, another the twin towers of House Frey. The third brandished a bloody head impaled upon the point of a tall spear. An old man's head it was, white-bearded and one-eyed. The spear was blank, with a pale wood, almost white, blank blank, along its upper shaft had blank, dark and red. Crowfood umber, Asha knew. The old Northman had fought to his death, it seemed. Perhaps the foe had thought the sight of the severed head would take the heart of the something. And then we have this like strange like break where I don't know how word star works, and then the next thing is they rush together like blank 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 blank. And
Stirring.
yeah, some people have come up with a lot of like great conclusions and analyses of what the implications of all this are.
Yeah. I mean, and it was such a big like, I think, because I remember helping out on that day, although I certainly didn't do as much as Radio Westeros or you, or really a lot.
No, you
of people.
did a lot, just behind the scenes.
Yeah, right behind the scenes. But there was the one point when we got to, and it was pretty early on when we realized it said Crowfood Umber, and we were all like, "Oh man,
What?
Oh,
What?
No
boy.
way.
is he dead?"
Not crow food.
I know Crowfood, everybody's favorite character, TV's Crowfood Umber.
I get that reference.
I hear they casted De Niro as crow food. It's going to be amazing.
Well,
You know
I
that
thought it
would
was
be
I thought it was like super cool too. Is that it was a collaborative effort, and it was collaborative in the sense that we're all like it was multi fandom. It was Facebook as it was multi fandom, as Glass Table Girl pointed out. It was Facebook, the Song of Ice and Fire Facebook group. It was Twitter. It was Westeros.org. It was the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit. And there were like cool people on the subreddit, particularly like Malingerer and Storm Lady and you know, a few of us as well, Feldman, people, names that you might remember or whatnot. But it was really cool to like kind of have that collaborative effort. Like it was cool because it felt like we were kind of like solving a mystery, even though it's really not probably that much of a mystery. But we had fun for a couple days. I think it like lasted like for 4 or 5 days, right?
Yeah, it went on.
I don't remember.
It went on and on.
I like how the first comment in it though echoes the comment from the winner of Best Catch, which is this what we're doing now? Is this who we become?
Play
Yeah.
with me.
You know, I've gone back and looked at posts like from 3 years ago, and people are saying that like 3 years ago.
I've been saying it forever.
Yeah.
To play devil's advocate and take the opposite side for a second, like I think you guys went a little crazy on it. Because I had looked at it before and I had seen the words King Tommen and a couple other things in there, and I was just like, this is ridiculous, and I put it on the back burner. And I wasn't going to look at it anymore. I was like, if there's something here, I either can't make it out or there's something I don't want to see anyway. I don't know which one it is, but I'm not going to investigate it.
I went that way too. I am so anti-spoilers that you guys were having your fun and I was like sitting there hiding in Slack like, I need to get away from this. I cannot have these.
I don't really do the spoilers thing, but I was discussing this with like Lady Gwyn. At a certain point, it became more of a puzzle for me. It wasn't like, it wasn't even about knowing what it was. It was that there are these words and they are eluding me, and I know I can figure out what these mean. I just need to buckle down. I can do it. And I was like, how dare it try to challenge me?
Well, I mean, like, so for me, like, I was so like excited when it came out that it was an Asha chapter, because as some of you might know, I have a real interest in the Battle of Winterfell in the Winds of Winter.
What?
Yeah, I know. Shocking,
What?
right?
Battles, Winterfell? You?
I don't know about that, Jeff. Are you
But-
sure you don't like magic more?
Talk to me dirty about Bloodraven any day, Joe Magician.
Oh.
But like, so I was like really excited, and this actually was the first stuff that we had seen about the Battle of Winterfell in 5 years since that Theon chapter was released.
Yeah.
So you can't imagine like how exciting it was for me to like see some of the stuff like come out. And it was sad when Crowfoot Umber, it turns out that he dies, because unlike these jokers on this podcast, I actually care about Crowfoot Umber.
I don't know who Crowfoot Umber is.
Oh my
Is
gosh.
he the one without the eye?
He's got the one eye,
Right.
and he's called Crowfoot because he was found.
He's dead?
Didn't the crow eat
Wow.
his eye or something?
Whoa.
Wow.
Too
Because
soon.
crows are
Eliana.
going to eat him?
I don't really
too
want to
soon.
talk about
His
this
eye,
anymore.
his eye fell out and a crow ate it, and he was pissed. So they called him
Right, so he has a
Crowfoot.
glass eye in there, and he wears a bearskin pelt. Don't you guys remember
Yeah.
any of this from A Dance of Dragons?
I
Is he the
totally do.
one
I'm on board with
who
you, Jeff.
shows up at the King's Moot with a dragon horn?
No.
Is that a different guy with a crow?
That's
thing?
Horsebane.
Mike,
Oh,
in the
yes.
tree.
Yes,
reread A
Like
Dance
the-
with Dragons until you like it.
Horsebane Greyjoy, my favorite character.
No, he's the guy with Dawn. He's the one that fought Ned Stark.
Oh yeah, Corin
That's
Halfhand.
Exactly.
Oh,
You mean Mance Rayder? We're gonna make.
How do you recover from that?
Well, we ruined the
you
podcast.
can't. You can't just the podcast is ruined.
Oh, jeez.
Stop, you're spoiling it. You're spoiling it. You're spoiling everything.
All right, thanks,
Quoting-
Roar Stark.
The bests. Right. All right, well, I think that about wraps it up. I mean, we covered all the best of awards exhaustively, I would say, and managed to hit some of our highlights from the past month or so, which, weren't eligible for best ofs for this year, but maybe next year, guys. Maybe next year. Keep those posts bookmarked. So stay tuned. First off, thanks to our everyone else behind the scenes who's been helping out. Sam, who will be editing all of this together. Aaron, of course. And of course, thank you to the users who create all this great content. Without you, there wouldn't be a reason to even make a podcast. It's all because you guys keep this board so incredible year-round, even now during the long night before the winds of winter. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes who helped out. I've been Bookshelf Stud.
And I've been Glass Table Girl.
And Brendan Beefish.
Admiral Curd.
I'm Joe Magician, and shout out to user Steve490 for your awesome flair. You're awesome, buddy.
Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next time.